The rain hammered against the windshield as Nolan Creed pulled into the driveway. 7:30 on a Thursday night, and Portland wore its typical gray veil. He killed the engine and sat for a moment, letting the steady drumbeat of water on metal calm the tension in his shoulders. 14 hours on boats, fixing engines, scrubbing rust from holes until his knuckles cracked and bled. The porch light was on. That meant Mara had actually bothered to drop Piper off on time for once. He stepped out into the downpour, coat collar pulled high, and jogged to the front door. His key turned in the lock. The house smelled like the frozen pizza he'd left in the fridge that morning. Cold. Empty. Piper. No answer. He moved through the living room, past the couch with its faded cushions and the coffee table stacked with marine repair manuals. The television was off. The kitchen light glowed dim through the doorway. "Baby, you home?" A soft sound. A whimper. Nolan's heart kicked against his ribs. He crossed the kitchen in 3 strides and found her sitting in the corner by the refrigerator, knees pulled to her chest, her stuffed owl clutched against her stomach. Her blonde hair hung damp around her face, blood on her lip. He dropped to his knees beside her. "Piper, what happened?" She looked at him with those wide gray eyes, the same color as his own, and her chin trembled. 7 years old, small for her age. A bruise was already forming on her cheek, purple spreading beneath pale skin. "Who did this?" His voice stayed level, but something cold spread through his chest, something he'd kept locked away for a long time. Piper's fingers tightened on the owl. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "Mom's friend got angry." The world tilted. Nolan reached out slowly, gently touched her chin to turn her face toward the light. The cut on her lip was clean, sharp, like she'd been struck. The bruise on her cheek carried the shape of knuckles. "Did he hit you?" She nodded. "Where's your mom?" "She told me not to tell." Piper's eyes filled with tears. "She said you'd get mad and make things worse." Nolan pulled her into his arms. She buried her face against his shoulder, and he felt her shaking. The rain outside grew louder, or maybe it was just the blood rushing in his ears. "I'm not mad at you," he said. "I'm never mad at you." He carried her upstairs to the bathroom, set her on the counter beside the sink. The first aid kit sat in the cabinet where it always did. He cleaned the cut with careful movements, applied antibiotic ointment, pressed a small bandage over it. Piper watched him in the mirror, silent. "Does it hurt anywhere else?" She shook her head. "You can tell me the truth." "My arm." She lifted her left arm. Red marks around her wrist, like someone had grabbed her. "Hard." Nolan took out his phone and photographed everything. The cut, the bruise, the marks on her wrist. Piper didn't ask why. She just sat there, small and quiet, while he documented what someone had done to his daughter. When he finished, he lifted her down and held her hand. "You hungry?" "A little." "How about mac and cheese?" I got a small smile. "The kind from the box." "The bright orange kind that's probably illegal in 12 countries. She followed him downstairs. He put water on to boil and watched her climb onto the couch, the owl still tucked under her arm. She turned on the television to some cartoon about talking animals. The colors reflected off her face, blues and greens and yellows, and he could still see the bruise. Mara's friend, Ronan Vale. Nolan had met him twice. Once at a school pickup when Mara had been running late, and once at a coffee shop downtown when he'd gone to drop off Piper's medication. Both times, Vale had smiled too wide, shaken hands too firm, talked too loud about his auto body shop and his connections in the city. Both times, Nolan had felt something off. The way Vale looked at Mara. The way he'd put his hand on Piper's shoulder and she'd gone rigid. The water boiled. He poured the pasta in, stirred it, counted the minutes. His phone sat on the counter. He could call the police right now. File a report. But Mara had already poisoned that well during the divorce, telling anyone who'd listen about his anger issues, his violent tendencies, his inability to handle stress. None of it true. All of it effective. He drained the pasta, mixed in the cheese powder and butter, divided it into 2 bowls. Piper ate slowly, mechanically, eyes on the television. He ate nothing, just watched her, and thought about the fear in her voice when she'd said Mom's friend got angry. After dinner, he ran her a bath. She played with the bubbles, but didn't laugh like she usually did. He helped her into her pajamas, tucked her into bed, read her a story about a girl who lived in a lighthouse. When he finished, she was already half asleep. Dad. Yeah, baby. Am I in trouble? No. You didn't do anything wrong. Mom said I shouldn't have knocked over his beer. Nolan's jaw tightened. That's not your fault. Adults shouldn't hurt kids. Ever. Okay. She closed her eyes. I love you. I love you too. He stayed until her breathing evened out, then went downstairs and grabbed his jacket. The rain had slowed to a drizzle. He got in his truck, started the engine, and drove across town to Mara's townhouse in the Northwest District. Her car sat in the driveway, lights on in the upstairs window. He parked behind her, got out, walked up the stone path to her front door. Knocked 3 times. Footsteps inside. The door opened. Mara stood there in a silk robe, wine glass in hand, her dark hair pulled into a loose knot. She looked surprised for half a second. Then her face shifted into that familiar expression of annoyance mixed with contempt. What do you want, Nolan? We need to talk about Piper. It's 9:30. Can't this wait? No. She sighed and stepped back, gesturing him inside. The townhouse looked like something out of a magazine. White furniture, abstract art on the walls. Everything clean and perfect and cold. She led him into the living room and sat on the edge of the couch, crossing her legs. What about Piper? Someone hit her. Mara took a sip of wine. She fell. She has a cut on her lip and a bruise on her cheek and finger marks on her wrist. Kids fall, Nolan. They bruise. You're being paranoid like always. She told me Ronan got angry. Mara's expression didn't change. Ronan said she tripped over a chair. She'd been running around, knocked over his drink, and when she tried to get away, she fell into the coffee table. That's a lie. It's the truth. But of course you'd rather believe I'm some kind of monster who lets people hurt our daughter. She stood up, walked to the window. You've been looking for an excuse to take her from me since the divorce. I'm looking at the evidence. She's scared of him. She's not scared. She's shy. There's a difference. She flinched when I touched her face. Because you probably came at her with that intense stare you do. You frighten her sometimes, Nolan. You know that, right? All that quiet brooding. He stared at her. A year ago, those words might have cut him. Might have made him doubt himself. Not anymore. He'd learned what she was during the divorce proceedings. A performer. Someone who twisted every conversation until you questioned your own memory. Keep him away from her, he said. Mara laughed. Actually laughed. The sound was sharp and bright, like breaking glass. Or what? You'll file another complaint? Tell another therapist I'm unfit? We've been through this. The court gave me joint custody. You get her on your days, I get her on mine, and what happens in my house is none of your business. It's my business when someone hurts her. No one hurt her. She fell. And if you keep pushing this, I'll go back to my lawyer and tell him you're harassing me. That you showed up at my house late at night, aggressive and threatening. How do you think that'll look? Nolan turned and walked to the door. His hand closed around the handle. He looked back at her. This isn't over. Yes, it is. She raised her wine glass like a toast. Drive safe. The roads are slippery tonight. He left without another word. The drive home took 20 minutes. He gripped the steering wheel and watched the city slide past. Rain-slicked streets. Neon signs reflecting off puddles. People hurrying under umbrellas. Everything normal. Everything fine. Except his daughter had been hit, and the person who was supposed to protect her had chosen her boyfriend instead. At home, he checked on Piper. She was asleep, curled on her side, the owl tucked under her chin. He stood in the doorway and watched her breathe. Then he went to his room and lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling. Sometime past midnight, he heard her cry out. He was up and moving before he was fully awake, crossing the hall into her room. She sat upright in bed, eyes wide, breathing hard. Bad dream, she said. He sat beside her. Want to talk about it? He was there, in the dream. He was hitting the table and yelling. She looked at him. Mommy said don't tell anyone. She said you'd make it worse. I won't make it worse. Promise. I promise. She lay back down. He stayed until she fell asleep again, then returned to his own bed. But sleep didn't come. He kept thinking about the fear in her voice. The marks on her wrist. Mara's cold smile. You're being paranoid like always. No, he wasn't paranoid. He was awake. And something in him that had been dormant for years, something cold and patient, and utterly ruthless, opened its eyes. The next morning, Nolan dropped Piper at school early. She clung to his hand as they walked through the parking lot, and he felt how tense she was, how she kept glancing at the other cars like she expected someone to jump out. "It's okay," he said. "You're safe here. What if Mom sends in to pick me up? I'll talk to your teacher. Make sure that doesn't happen." Inside, the elementary school bustled with kids and parents. Bright murals on the walls. Construction paper artwork taped to bulletin boards. Piper's classroom was on the second floor, room 204. Her teacher, Ms. Claire Dalton, stood by the door greeting students. 29 years old, according to the school directory. Brown hair pulled into a practical ponytail. Patient eyes. She'd been teaching for 5 years, and Piper loved her. "Morning, Piper," Claire said, then noticed Nolan. "Mr. Creed, everything okay? Can I talk to you for a minute?" "Of course." "Piper, why don't you go put your backpack away?" Piper nodded and slipped into the classroom. Claire stepped into the hallway with him, and her smile faded when she got a good look at his face. "What happened?" "Piper was hurt yesterday, at her mother's house. I need you to watch her today. If anyone besides me tries to pick her up, call me immediately." "Hurt how?" He showed her the photos on his phone. Claire's expression shifted from concern to anger. "Who did this?" "Her mother's boyfriend. Mara claims she fell. That's not a fall injury." Claire's voice was tight. "That's assault." "I know, but Mara's already spinning the story. If I push too hard without evidence, she'll accuse me of harassment and use it against me in court." "Have you contacted Child Protective Services?" "Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first. See if you've noticed anything." Claire nodded slowly. "Come with me." She led him into the classroom. Most of the students were at their desks, pulling out books and papers. Claire walked to her computer at the front of the room, typed in a password, pulled up a video file. "This is from 2 days ago," she said quietly. "Security footage from the hallway camera. Watch." The video showed the hallway outside the classroom. Kids streaming out at dismissal time. Then Piper appeared, walking slowly, clutching her backpack. A man entered the frame. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair. Ronan Vale. He smiled at Piper, said something, reached out and patted her head. She flinched, physically recoiled from his touch. Her whole body went rigid. Ronan's smile didn't waver. He took her hand and led her down the hallway. She looked back once at the classroom door, and the expression on her face made Nolan's chest tighten. Fear. Pure fear. "I noticed it that day," Claire said, "the way she reacted to him. And when I asked her the next morning if everything was okay at home, she just nodded and changed the subject. But she's been quieter this week. Withdrawn. Yesterday, she drew a picture during art class. She pulled open a drawer and removed a sheet of construction paper. Piper's drawing showed 3 stick figures. One labeled MOM, one labeled me, and one larger figure labeled Ronan. The figures stood in a room. Dark crayon marks covered the background. And in Ronan's stick figure hand was a black shape that might have been a bottle. She wouldn't explain it, Claire said. Just put it in her folder and asked to go to the bathroom. Nolan stared at the drawing. His daughter's attempt to communicate what she couldn't say out loud. "Can I keep this?" "Yes. And I'm filing a report with the school counselor today. They'll have to notify CPS." "Thank you." Claire touched his arm. "Mr. Creed. Nolan, I know this is hard, but you're doing the right thing. Piper needs you to be strong right now." "I'm strong," he said. "That's not the problem." He left before she could ask what he meant. At work, the marina was quiet. Early spring meant most boat owners were just starting to bring their vessels out of storage. Nolan spent the morning rebuilding a carburetor on a 40-foot sailboat, while his mind turned over everything he knew. Fact 1. Ronan had hurt Piper. Fact 2. Mara was protecting him. Fact 3. He needed evidence before he could act. His co-worker, Tanner Briggs, showed up around 10 with coffee and a bag of donuts. Tanner was younger than Nolan by 4 years, lean and wiry, with a constant grin and an encyclopedic knowledge of boats. They'd worked together for 6 years. "You look like someone died," Tanner said, handing him a cup. "Bad night. Want to talk about it?" Nolan hesitated, then told him. Everything. Piper's injuries. Mara's denial. The video from school. When he finished, Tanner wasn't grinning anymore. "Jesus, man. That's heavy. I need to know more about Ronan Vale. You grew up here. You know people. Vale's auto body, right? Yeah, I know of him. He's got a reputation. What kind? The kind where guys whisper about him at bars. Rumor is he knocked around his last girlfriend pretty bad. She tried to press charges, but suddenly she dropped everything and left town. Tanner leaned against the boat hull. He's connected too. His cousin's married to someone in the police department, and he donates to the mayor's campaign every year. That kind of connected. Detective Monroe, don't know the name, but if you're planning to go to the cops, you better have your evidence airtight. Otherwise, they'll bury it. Nolan nodded. He'd expected as much. What are you going to do? Tanner asked. Protect my daughter. And if the system won't help? Nolan picked up a wrench and returned to the carburetor. Then I'll stop using the system. Tanner was quiet for a moment. Then he said, You need anything, you let me know. I'm serious. I will. They worked in silence for the rest of the morning. But Nolan felt it now. That cold clarity. That absolute certainty. He'd been trying to play by the rules for the past year, letting lawyers and judges and mediators handle his divorce, swallowing his anger, accepting shared custody even though every instinct screamed that Mara was dangerous. No more. His daughter had been hurt. The system had failed. And Nolan Creed was done waiting for someone else to fix this. That afternoon, he picked Piper up from school. She ran to him across the parking lot and threw her arms around his waist. He held her and felt how small she was, how fragile. How was your day? Good. Ms. Dalton let me help clean the fish tank. Did you see any interesting fish? There's a new one. It's orange with black stripes. She said it's called a clownfish. They drove home. He made her grilled cheese for dinner. She did her homework at the kitchen table while he cleaned up. Everything normal. Everything routine. But when he tucked her into bed that night, she said, Dad, are you going to fight with Mom again? Why do you ask? Because last time you fought, everything got scary. The lawyers and the court and all those people asking me questions. He brushed hair from her forehead. I'm not going to fight with her. I'm going to make sure you're safe. That's different. Okay. She closed her eyes. Will Ronan come here? No, he's not allowed here. Good. After she fell asleep, Nolan went to his computer and started researching. Ronan Vale, Vale's auto body, Detective Lyle Monroe, the connections between them. He found news articles, business records, social media profiles. Built a picture of who Ronan was and who protected him. An hour into his search, his phone rang. Unknown number. Hello, Mr. Creed? This is Detective Lyle Monroe with Portland PD. I understand you have some concerns about your daughter. Nolan's grip tightened on the phone. How did you get this number? Your ex-wife called us. Said you showed up at her house last night, making threats. Said you're harassing her about some accident your daughter had. It wasn't an accident. She says it was. And frankly, Mr. Creed, your history of domestic disputes doesn't help your credibility here. I've never been arrested for anything. No, but your ex-wife's lawyer painted a pretty clear picture during your divorce proceedings. Anger management issues, intimidating behavior, unwillingness to compromise. That's all lies. Maybe, maybe not. But here's what I know. Your daughter is fine. Your ex-wife has custody. And you showing up at her house late at night, aggressive and demanding, looks a lot like harassment. If you keep this up, I'll have to file a report. My daughter was assaulted. Your daughter fell. Kids fall. It happens. Monroe's voice was pleasant, reasonable, the tone of someone explaining basic facts to a slow child. Now, I'm giving you a friendly warning here. Back off. Let your ex-wife raise her kid in peace. If you have concerns, take them to family court. But if you call us again with this story, if you harass Ms. Creed, if you cause any more trouble, you're going to find yourself in a situation you don't want to be in. Understood. Nolan said nothing. Mr. Creed, understood. Good. Have a nice evening. The line went dead. Nolan sat in the dark living room and stared at his phone. So that was how it was going to be. Mara had moved first, called in favors, painted him as the problem. And Monroe had taken her side without even investigating. He opened his laptop again and searched for Monroe's name. Found a news article from 2 years ago. Monroe had been investigated for accepting bribes from a local business owner, but the case had been dropped due to insufficient evidence. The business owner's name was mentioned in passing. Ronald Vale, Ronan's father. The connections were clearer now. Monroe was on Ronan's payroll. Mara knew it. That's why she called him instead of regular dispatch. They thought they had this locked down. Thought Nolan would back off like a good little ex-husband. They didn't know him at all. Saturday morning, Nolan drove to his mother's house in Gresham. Ruth Ellis lived in a small craftsman on a quiet street, the same house she bought 30 years ago after his father died. The yard was neat, the paint was fresh, and a sign by the front door read in soliciting in bold letters. He knocked twice and let himself in. In the kitchen, Ruth called. She stood at the stove, frying bacon, a cigarette burning in an ashtray on the counter. 63 years old, and still looked like she could take on anyone foolish enough to cross her. Gray hair cut short, sharp eyes, hands marked with old burns and scars. "You look like hell," she said. "Thanks, Ma. Coffee's on the counter. Sit." He poured himself a cup and sat at the kitchen table. Ruth finished cooking, plated the bacon and eggs, set a plate in front of him, and one at her own seat. She took a drag from her cigarette and studied him. What happened? He told her everything. Piper's injuries, Mara's denial, the video at school, Monroe's threat. When he finished, Ruth stubbed out her cigarette and pushed her plate aside. "That woman," she said, "was always poison. I told you that before you married her. You did. And you didn't listen because you thought you loved her. I did love her. Then you're a fool." Ruth stood and walked to the sink. "Love makes men weak. Makes them forgive things they shouldn't forgive. Your father loved me, and look what that got him." Nolan remembered. His father, Frank Reed, had been a drinker and a cheat. Came home late. Hit Ruth when he was angry. For years she'd taken it. Then one night, when Nolan was 12, he'd woken to the smell of smoke. His father's clothes were burning in the backyard fire pit, and Ruth stood watching them with a garden hose in one hand. Frank had left the next day and never came back. Ruth never explained what she'd said to him, but Nolan had seen something in her eyes that night that he'd recognized in himself years later. The willingness to burn everything down. "What are you going to do?" Ruth asked. "I don't know yet." "Yes, you do. You just don't want to say it out loud." She turned to face him. "That woman chose her boyfriend over your daughter. The police are protecting him. The system's not going to help you. So you have two choices. Walk away and let Piper suffer, or stop playing by their rules and handle it yourself. If I do that, I could lose custody completely. If you don't, you'll lose her anyway. Just slower." Nolan drank his coffee. His mother was right. He'd known it since Thursday night, sitting in his truck outside Mara's townhouse. But hearing someone else say it made it real. "You were always too soft," Ruth continued. "Too willing to compromise. To give people the benefit of the doubt. Your father was a bastard, but at least he understood how the world really works. It's not fair. It's not just. It's a fight, and you either win or you lose." "What did you say to Dad that night?" "The night he left." Ruth smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "I told him if he ever came back, I'd kill him. And I would have. He knew it too. That's why he stayed gone. You think I should threaten Ronan? I think you should do whatever it takes to protect your daughter. If that means threatening him, do it. If it means something else, do that instead. But stop hoping someone else will fix this for you." He stood. "Thanks for breakfast." "Nolan." She grabbed his arm. "You're my son. That little girl is my granddaughter. You do what you need to do. And if anyone asks, I don't know anything about it. I will." He left feeling clearer than he had in days. Ruth was brutal, uncompromising, sometimes cruel. But she understood survival. And right now, that's what this was. Survival. Back home, he spent the afternoon researching. Ronan's schedule, his business, his connections. Vale's auto body was in southeast Portland, a squat building with a chain-link fence and a parking lot full of damaged cars. Ronan lived in a condo downtown, drove a black Escalade, ate lunch most days at a sports bar near his shop. Nolan made notes, drew diagrams, marked times and locations. Tanner called around 5. "You busy? Working on something. Want company?" "Not tonight." "You doing something stupid?" "Not yet." Tanner was quiet. Then, "Don't do anything I wouldn't do." "That doesn't narrow it down much." "Fair point. Call me if you need backup." "Will do." Sunday, Nolan had Piper. They went to the aquarium, walked along the waterfront, ate ice cream, even though the weather was cold. She seemed happier away from Mara's house. Laughed more. Talked more. When he asked if she wanted to go back to her mother's that evening, she went quiet. "I have to, right? That's what the custody agreement says. Can I just stay here? Not yet, but I'm working on it. That night, he dropped her at Mara's townhouse. She walked to the door slowly, shoulders hunched. Mara opened it, smiled at Piper, ignored Nolan. The door closed. Nolan sat in his truck for 5 minutes, engine running, hands gripping the wheel. Then he drove to a hardware store and bought a motion-activated camera, the kind designed for home security. Small, wireless, easy to hide. On Monday morning, he called in sick to work. Then he drove to Mara's townhouse. Her car was gone. She'd be at her job downtown, some marketing firm where she spent her days planning campaigns and pretending to be important. Ronan's Escalade wasn't in the driveway either. Nolan parked down the street and walked back, carrying a toolbox. Mara had never changed the locks after the divorce. He let himself in through the back door. The townhouse was as cold and perfect as he remembered. White carpets, glass tables, framed photographs of Piper that Mara probably showed to clients and coworkers to prove what a good mother she was. He placed the camera in the living room, behind a potted plant on the bookshelf, positioned it to capture the couch and coffee table. Activated it. The indicator light blinked once, then went dark. He tested it with his phone. Clear video. Good audio. He left the same way he'd come, locked the door behind him, drove back home. Now he waited. Tuesday night, the camera captured Mara coming home alone. She poured wine, turned on the television, scrolled through her phone. Wednesday night, Ronan showed up. Nolan watched the video on his laptop. Ronan brought takeout. They ate on the couch, talked about their days, kissed. Normal couple stuff. Thursday night changed everything. Nolan was at his computer when the motion alert came through. He opened the video feed and watched. Mara and Ronan in the living room. They were arguing. Mara stood by the kitchen, arms crossed. Ronan sat on the couch, beer in hand. "You said you'd be here by 6, Mara said. "I got held up. You always get held up. Do you know how that makes me look?" "I don't care how it makes you look. My friends are starting to ask questions. About us. About why you're never around when I need you." Ronan set down his beer. "Maybe I'm tired of being your accessory. You're proof that you're over your ex. That's not what this is. Isn't it?" He stood. "You call me when you want someone to piss off Nolan. When you need a name to drop at parties. But when I actually need something from you, you're suddenly busy. That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair." He moved closer to her. "You know what your problem is? You think you can control everyone. Your ex-me, even that kid. Don't call her that kid. She's my daughter. She's a pain in the ass. Knocking over my drink. Whining all the time. She's 7 years old, and she needs to learn some respect." Mara's expression shifted. "What did you do?" "Nothing she didn't deserve." Ronan, "What did you do?" "I taught her a lesson. Same as my old man taught me. You want respect, you enforce it." Mara went pale. "You hit her. I disciplined her. There's a difference. You can't hit her." Nolan's already suspicious. If he finds out, he's not going to find out. Unless you tell him. Ronan grabbed her arm. "And you won't. Because if you do, I'll make sure everyone knows what you really are. How you lied in court. How you used that kid as a weapon against her father. Let go of me." "Or what?" Mara tried to pull away. Ronan slapped her. The sound cracked through the speakers. She stumbled back, hand to her cheek, eyes wide. Ronan looked at his hand like he was surprised. Then his expression hardened. "This is your fault," he said. "You pushed me. Get out. I'm not going anywhere. Get out of my house. It's not your house. It's your ex's name on half the mortgage, remember? Community property. You only got to keep it because the judge felt sorry for you. So maybe you should shut up and remember who you're talking to." Mara's voice shook. "If you ever touch her again, You'll what? Run to your ex." Ronan laughed. "He's already convinced you're a terrible mother. You think anyone will believe you if you suddenly change your story? You dug this hole. Now you get to lie in it." He grabbed his jacket and walked out. The front door slammed. Mara stood in the living room, hands still pressed to her cheek, and then she started crying. Nolan stopped the video. He had it. Clear evidence of Ronan's violence. His admission that he'd hurt Piper. Mara's knowledge of it. Everything he needed. But he also had something else. An idea. He copied the video file and opened editing software he'd used years ago for a brief stint doing freelance work. He pulled up another video, security footage from outside a bank downtown. He found it online, Public records from a robbery investigation. The footage showed Detective Monroe talking to a man, shaking his hand, accepting an envelope. The man's face wasn't clear, but with the right editing, a few strategic cuts, some careful timing, it could be Ronan. Nolan worked through the night. Spliced footage, adjusted timestamps, made it look like Monroe was taking a bribe from Ronan. The edit wasn't perfect, but it didn't need to be. It just needed to be convincing enough to raise questions. By dawn, he had 2 videos, one showing Ronan's assault and confession, one showing what looked like Monroe's corruption. He uploaded the first video anonymously to 3 local news stations and 2 online news sites. Sent it to Claire Dalton. Sent it to Child Protective Services. The second video he saved. That was his insurance. Then he went to make coffee and wait for the explosion. It came faster than he expected. By noon, his phone was ringing. Mara's number. He didn't answer. She left a voicemail, screaming incoherently about betrayal and lawyers and how he'd ruined her life. At 2 o'clock, Detective Monroe called. Nolan answered. "You think you're clever?" Monroe said, "Sending that video around? I don't know what you're talking about." "We traced the upload to a coffee shop downtown. Found a witness who saw someone matching your description. Lots of people match my description. This isn't over, Creed. You just started a war you can't win. Funny. I feel like I'm winning right now." Monroe hung up. That evening, the local news ran the story. Video footage showed a prominent businessman assaulting his girlfriend and admitting to child abuse. The girlfriend was identified as Mara Creed, the child as 7-year-old Piper Creed. Ronan Vale's face was pixelated in the broadcast, but his name was mentioned. Social media erupted. People who knew Ronan from his auto body shop came forward with stories. Former employees talking about his temper. Ex-girlfriends describing his violence. The mayor's office issued a statement distancing themselves from Vale's campaign donations. By Wednesday, CPS had opened an investigation. An emergency hearing was scheduled for Friday. Nolan's lawyer called and said it looked good. Very good. Thursday night, Nolan received another call, this time from Ronan's number. He answered. "You're a dead man," Ronan said. "I have more videos," Nolan replied calmly. "If anything happens to me, they go public, including footage of Detective Monroe taking bribes from you. Fake footage, sure, but convincing enough to start an investigation. Monroe will lose his badge. You'll lose your protection, and then we'll see who's dead." Silence. "Leave my daughter alone," Nolan continued. "Leave Mara alone, and maybe I'll let you walk away from this. This isn't over." "Yes," Nolan said. "It is." He hung up. Friday morning, the hearing lasted 3 hours. Nolan presented his evidence. The school video, the photographs of Piper's injuries, the recording from Mara's living room. Claire testified about Piper's behavior changes. Even the school counselor spoke up, describing the girl's obvious fear. Mara's lawyer tried to spin it, claimed the video was taken without consent, that Nolan had broken into her home. But the judge was unimpressed. When the lawyer suggested Nolan had anger issues, the judge asked if he'd ever been convicted of anything. The lawyer admitted he hadn't. Then the judge asked if the video showed Ronan Vale admitting to hitting a child. The lawyer went quiet. The ruling came quickly. Emergency, full custody granted to Nolan Creed. Mara's visitation would be supervised only. Ronan Vale was not to have any contact with a minor child. A criminal investigation would be opened regarding child abuse. Nolan walked out of the courthouse with Piper's hand in his. She looked up at him. "Do I have to go back to Mom's house?" "No, ever. Not unless you want to." She squeezed his hand tighter. "I don't want to." "Then you won't." That night, Claire stopped by with cookies. She'd asked permission earlier, said she wanted to see how Piper was adjusting. Nolan agreed, because Piper lit up at the mention of her teacher's name. They sat in the living room while Piper showed Claire her new drawings. Happy pictures now. Bright colors. Families of fish. Lighthouses. Suns. "You seem lighter," Claire said to Nolan. "Not lighter," he replied, watching his daughter. "Just finished. Finished. With playing by the rules that don't work." Claire looked at him carefully. "What you did was brave. Standing up for her like that. It wasn't brave. It was necessary. Still." She smiled. "Piper's lucky to have you." After she left, Nolan tucked Piper into bed. She fell asleep almost immediately, safe and relaxed in a way she hadn't been in months. He went downstairs and opened his laptop, pulled up the second video, the fabricated footage of Monroe and Ronan. He watched it once, then deleted it. He didn't need it anymore, but he also didn't regret making it, because that threat had made Ronan back off, had protected his daughter, and Nolan Creed didn't regret anything he'd done to protect his family. 3 weeks passed, quiet weeks. Piper started therapy, slowly opening up about what had happened at her mother's house. Nolan attended every session, held her hand when she cried, promised her over and over that she was safe now. Mara tried calling. He blocked her number. She tried showing up at the house. He told her to leave, or he'd call the police. Her supervised visitation was scheduled for Saturday afternoons, but Piper refused to go, and the therapist backed her up. The court agreed. Visitation suspended until further notice. Ronan disappeared. His auto body shop stayed open, but he was never there. His employees ran the place while he hid somewhere, avoiding the criminal investigation that was building against him. Detective Monroe got suspended. The video Nolan had sent around raised enough questions that Internal Affairs opened their own investigation. They found financial irregularities, connections to Ronan's family. Nothing concrete enough for charges yet, but enough to sideline Monroe. Everything was falling into place, but Nolan wasn't finished. He'd learned something important during this whole process. The system only worked if you had leverage, power, evidence that couldn't be ignored. And even then, it only worked halfway. Ronan was still walking around free. Mara still claimed she'd done nothing wrong. And eventually, people would forget. The news cycle would move on. The outrage would fade. Then what? Nolan needed a permanent solution. On a Tuesday night, after Piper had gone to bed, he called Tanner. "You busy? Watching a game. What's up? I need your help with something. Legal something or illegal something? Gray area." Tanner was quiet for a moment. "I'll be there in 20. He showed up wearing a Blazers jersey and carrying a six-pack of beer. They sat at Nolan's kitchen table, and Nolan laid out his plan. "You want to burn down his shop," Tanner said when he'd finished. "I want to make it look like an accident. That's still arson. Only if they can prove it." "Man," Tanner ran a hand through his hair. "That's serious. You could go to prison." "I could, but I won't, because I'll do it right." "And you're sure about this? Like really sure? Because once you cross this line, there's no going back." Nolan met his eyes. "He hurt my daughter. The system slapped his wrist and let him walk. He'll do it again. To another kid. Another woman. I can stop that. By killing him. By removing the problem permanently." Tanner drank half his beer in one go. "You're talking about murder. I'm talking about justice. The law calls it murder. The law failed." They sat in silence. Tanner finished his beer and opened another one. This weekend. Saturday night. The shop's closed. He lives in that condo downtown, but he spends Saturday nights at a bar in Northeast. Gets drunk, drives home around midnight. "How do you know his schedule?" "I've been watching him for 2 weeks." "Jesus." Tanner shook his head. "Okay, walk me through it. How does it happen?" Nolan pulled out a notebook. He'd been planning this for days, thinking through every detail. Vale's auto body has gasoline and paint thinner stored in the back. Chemicals for cleaning engines. All flammable. The wiring in the building is old, lots of exposed conduit. It wouldn't take much to make it look like an electrical fire. And Ronan? He goes to the shop sometimes after the bar. Checks on things. If I can get him there Saturday night while he's drunk and then start the fire. He dies, and it looks like he caused it himself. Tanner nodded slowly. "What do you need from me?" "An alibi. I'll be at your house Saturday night. We'll watch a game, drink beer, fall asleep on the couch. If anyone asks, you'll tell them I was there all night. And if they check your phone, GPS data, I'll leave my phone at your place. Drive your car. Wear gloves. No evidence." Tanner studied him. "You've really thought this through." "I have. And there's no talking you out of it?" "No." "All right." Tanner stood. "Then I'm in. But on one condition." "What?" "You owe me. Big time. And someday I'm going to collect." "Deal." Saturday came slowly. Nolan spent the day with Piper, taking her to the park, making pancakes for breakfast, reading stories before bed. He acted normal, calm, present. because that's what she needed. A father who was stable and reliable and safe. At 8 o'clock, he drove to Tanner's apartment. Tanner had beer and pizza waiting. They turned on a basketball game and settled in. Last chance to back out, Tanner said. I'm not backing out. Okay then. Tanner handed him a set of keys. My truck's in the garage. Tank's full. Don't crash it. Nolan left his phone on Tanner's coffee table and took the keys. The truck was a beat-up Chevy, 12 years old, no GPS system. Perfect. He drove across town to Ronan's bar, parked across the street, and waited. At 11:30, Ronan stumbled out. Drunk, loud, laughing with two other men who got into a cab. Ronan stood on the sidewalk, fumbling with his keys, then decided to walk instead of drive. Nolan followed at a distance. Ronan walked 3 blocks, then got into his Escalade parked in a side lot. Started the engine. Drove. Nolan stayed behind him, several cars back, keeping distance. Ronan's driving was erratic. Weaving. Running a red light. He didn't go home. He turned toward Industrial Southeast. Toward his shop. Nolan's heart rate stayed steady. This was happening. Ronan pulled into the parking lot of Vale's auto body. Got out. Stumbled to the door and unlocked it. Disappeared inside. Lights came on. Nolan parked the truck 2 blocks away. He put on gloves, grabbed the backpack he'd prepared. Inside was a bottle of gasoline, a roll of wire, and a small toolkit. He approached the shop from the back. The fence was chain link, easy to climb. He dropped into the lot and moved to the rear door. It was unlocked. Ronan was getting careless. Inside, the shop smelled like oil and metal and chemicals. Nolan moved quietly through the work bays. He could hear Ronan in the office, talking on the phone, his words slurred. Nolan found the storage room. Shelves lined with paint thinner, cleaning solvents, gasoline cans. He opened several cans, poured liquid across the floor, splashed it on the walls. Created a trail leading back toward the main work area. In the electrical panel, he found old wiring. Stripped insulation. Exposed copper. He wrapped a piece of wire around 2 bare contacts, created a short circuit, nothing catastrophic yet. Just enough to generate heat. Then he poured gasoline around the base of the panel. He could still hear Ronan in the office, arguing with someone. Probably Mara. Nolan moved to the front of the shop. Found Ronan's Escalade parked inside one of the bays. He opened the fuel cap, stuffed a rag inside, let gasoline soak into it. The fumes were overwhelming now. The whole shop reeked of accelerant. He heard Ronan hang up the phone. Footsteps coming closer. Nolan slipped out the back door and into the shadows. Ronan appeared in the main work area, still holding his phone, still drunk. He walked to the Escalade, started to get in, then stopped. Sniffed the air. What the hell? He looked around, saw the gasoline pooled on the floor. His eyes widened. Too late. The short circuit in the electrical panel sparked. Heat built up, caught the gasoline vapor. A small flame. Then an explosion. The fireball ripped through the shop. Windows shattered. Metal screamed. Ronan's scream cut off almost instantly as the flames engulfed him. Nolan watched from the fence. Felt nothing. No satisfaction. No guilt. Just cold, absolute certainty that this was necessary. He climbed the fence and walked back to the truck. Drove carefully, following traffic laws, back to Tanner's apartment. Arrived at 12:45. Tanner opened the door. Done. Any problems? No. Good. Tanner handed him a beer. Now we watch the rest of this game and pretend you've been here all night. They sat on the couch. The news broke around 1:30. Fire in Southeast Portland. 1 fatality. Vale's auto body. The victim appeared to be the owner, Ronan Vale. Investigators suspected he'd been working on a vehicle, possibly intoxicated, when some kind of chemical spill ignited. The building's old wiring may have been a contributing factor. No signs of foul play. Nolan drank his beer and watched the flames on the television. Tanner sat beside him, silent. When the game ended, they both lay down. Nolan on the couch, Tanner in the chair. Neither spoke. The next morning, Nolan went home. Piper was still asleep when he arrived. He made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, waiting. His phone rang at 9. Claire, did you hear the news? She asked. What news? Ronan Vale died last night. A fire at his shop. I hadn't heard. The police are saying it was an accident. He was drunk. Working on something. The whole building went up. That's terrible. Claire was quiet. Nolan, where were you last night? At a friend's house. What? Just wondering. You think I had something to do with it? No. No, of course not. It's a convenient coincidence. Sometimes bad things happen to bad people. Sometimes, she agreed. Then softer, how's Piper? She's good. Still sleeping. When she wakes up, tell her I said hi. I will. After he hung up, he sat and thought about Claire's question. Where were you last night? She was smart, observant. She'd put pieces together eventually. But she wouldn't say anything, because she cared about Piper and she knew Ronan had been a threat. At noon, Piper woke up. She came downstairs in her pajamas, hair tangled, the stuffed owl under her arm. Morning, Dad. Morning, baby. Want some pancakes? Yes, please. He made breakfast while she watched cartoons. When they sat down to eat, she said, Ms. Dalton texted. She said to say hi. I'll tell her you said hi back. Is she coming over again? Maybe. Would you like that? Piper nodded. She's nice. And she makes good cookies. She does. They ate in comfortable silence. Piper kicked her feet under the table, humming along to the TV. Happy. Safe. That afternoon, 2 detectives came to the door. Not Monroe. 2 others. They asked Nolan where he'd been the previous night. He told them at Tanner Briggs' apartment, watching basketball. They asked if anyone could verify that. He gave them Tanner's number. They asked if he knew Ronan Vale. He said yes, his ex-wife's boyfriend. They asked if he'd had any contact with Vale recently. He said no. He'd been avoiding him after the custody case. They asked if he knew anything about the fire. He said no. He'd heard about it on the news that morning. They thanked him for his time and left. Tanner called an hour later. They just left my place. I told them you were here all night. They seemed satisfied. Good. We're okay, man. No one suspects anything. I know. That evening, after Piper went to bed, Nolan opened his laptop and checked the news. The investigation into Ronan's death was being ruled accidental. The fire marshal's report cited old wiring, chemical storage violations, and operator error. Blood alcohol tests showed Ronan had been heavily intoxicated. Case closed. Nolan closed the laptop and went to the window. Rain was falling again, washing the city clean. Somewhere out there, Mara was grieving. Monroe was scrambling to save his career. People were talking about what a tragedy it was that Ronan Vale had died. But Nolan felt nothing. No guilt. No second thoughts. He'd done what needed to be done. Protected his daughter. Removed a threat. Made sure it could never happen again. A week later, Claire stopped by with cookies. She brought coloring books for Piper, who immediately dragged her to the living room to show off her latest drawings. Nolan stayed in the kitchen, cleaning up dinner dishes. Claire joined him after a few minutes. She's doing really well, Claire said. She is. Therapy seems to be helping. It is. Claire dried a plate and set it on the counter. I spoke with her therapist. She says Piper feels safe now. That whatever fear she had is gone. That's good. It is. Claire paused. Nolan. About Ronan. What about him? I'm not asking any questions. I don't want to know, but I want you to understand something. She looked at him. Whatever happened that night, whatever you did or didn't do, I'm grateful. Because Piper is safe now. And that's all that matters. Nolan met her eyes. I was at Tanner's house all night. I know. That's what everyone says. She smiled slightly. You seem different lately. Lighter. Not lighter, he said. Just finished. Claire nodded, understanding something unspoken. Well, for what it's worth, I think you're a good father. Thank you. She left after another half hour. Piper waved goodbye from the window, then returned to her coloring books. Nolan sat beside her on the couch. She leaned against him, crayon moving across paper. Drawing a house. A garden. 2 people standing in the sunshine. Who's that? He asked. Me and you. No one else. She thought about it. Ms. Dalton can come visit sometimes. But mostly just us. Sound perfect. Later, after Piper was asleep, Nolan pinned her newest drawing to the refrigerator. The house and garden. The 2 figures in sunshine. And in the corner, barely visible, a dark shape that might have been a shadow or might have been something else. But over it, Piper had drawn a bright yellow sun. He stood in the dark kitchen and looked at that drawing for a long time. Then he poured himself a glass of water and went to bed. The storm was over. He'd won. His daughter was safe. And Nolan Creed felt no guilt whatsoever.